Welcome back to the Eastern Clash Day 1. We are getting ready for our final match of the day in the losers bracket. But before we even start talking about it, Jay-How is going to be joining me. Jay-How, what's been your favorite series so far today?
Ooh, probably the MVP Black Series, because you knew they were going to be good, but how good would they be against one of China's teams? So that one, to me, it was kind of like, can we get the light? Can we get the spotlight on that one, you know? So that was what I was looking forward to most. Did not disappoint.
It was pretty decisive. For me, I think I really enjoyed Zero versus Tempest. It was just kind of cool to see this Chinese team that we thought would just do so poorly, especially with their limitations that are brought upon them with having different roster switch up and actually putting up a good fight against Tempest. And of course, it's great to see some old champions do pretty well and get that 2-0. So our next match of the day that we are gearing up for will be the wonderful Super Perfect team taking on Team Face Check. What are you thinking?
Earlier I sat with Gilly as we took a look at Team Face Check for the first time, and the potential's there, but you kind of got to wonder, a team like Super Perfect Team didn't look great in their series. Could this be that moment that we have somebody from Taiwan? As we always look back to PBA from last year, same region, same team that almost made it to BlizzCon here of Team Face Check. So could they be moving on to day number 2? Or will they be going out in day number 1?
It's a good question. It's so unfortunate, too, because we are so used to Please Buff Arthas and how well they played. And you look at Team Face Check and they kind of feel like they are a Please Buff Arthas, but they're just not quite as good. And so you can see the potential that you already mentioned about. And what I do like about Taiwan is they do have shot calling, and whether or not it's the right calling, when they make calls, it's just done instantly. It's very Chinese-esque in a way, in terms of their movement and when they make a call, when they make a movement. So it's all about cleaning up their overall shot calling, and they're good to go. Now, over to the Chinese team here, SPT, potentially on the cutting block here, the last team to potentially not make it to day number 2 for China. This would be the first one out if they did fall out. Of course, Taiwan as well, the only representative here, would be unfortunate for them to go home as well. So both teams here with a big, massive undertaking for both these teams.
Yeah, I mean, expectations are for Super Perfect Team to move on. But again, in their first series, I mean, obviously they had a tough test, but they did not look like a team that you would think would be threatening. But, you know, this is their opportunity to at least get to day number 2, get day number 1 out of the way. Sometimes for some teams, it's just about building the momentum.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we do run into that.
Well, we'll see if they can make it to day number 2. Here we are, our bands. It's going to be Infernal Shrines, and we're going to be moving into Dragonshire for game number 1. Seen it a couple times already today, but the global play, obviously, very obvious here. So we'll see if we get that from our Chinese team. Our Chinese teams do love to run their Dahaka and their Falstad.
Yeah, especially Super Perfect Team. I was actually taking a look at some of their past drafts and stuff before we hit stage, and it's a lot of Dahaka. I can tell you that much. They love Dahaka, and obviously on this battleground, it is one that is heavily favored. I think we even saw a draft earlier. It was like Dahaka and Falstad during their first 2 picks. So, you know, definitely something that you have to be wary of during drafting. That was something that Team Face Check, I think, had a little bit of issues with during their first series, was their drafting. It's like almost they weren't expecting certain things. They kind of went with what they thought worked. But I think if they just keep it a little bit more simple, I do wonder, when we do get to the draft in here in a moment, if the other teams were watching about target bans on ranged assassins against TFC.
Yeah, we'll see if that will be the pickup here. They seem to really enjoy their auto attackers, their Valas. Even Zul'jin slightly here is picked up more often for Taiwan. So here we go. First ban is going to be Dahaka, so it seems like SPT here is not going to be giving up the hero. TFC on the other side here, what are they going to ban?
I know this sounds crazy. You can let Tassadar through. I feel this is going to be a Falstad. If not, it'll be a Malfurion, perhaps. Yeah, there's the Falstad. They're playing the global game. When a team bans out Dahaka, you know that they're looking to play the global game. So you got to pick your poison. Do you let Tassadar through, or do you let the global through and they let Falstad through?
I feel like on this battleground, you can actually give up Tassadar. He has his strengths, but I feel like Falstad has more of an impact. So the drafting there a little bit different there for TFC. I wouldn't have minded if they let Tassadar go through. Wouldn't mind a Malfurion ban, and then you got the Falstad if Tassadar is picked up, or do it yourself, especially with TFC being such an auto-attack hero-based team. They always move into their Valas. In fact, Vala will be the first pick. Now, do they pick up their tank, or do they grab their top laner? Instead, they're going to grab Ragnaros.
Yeah, you know, you've got your great solo laner there in Ragnaros. He's got the self-sustain. He'll be able to go against Falstad pretty easily. You've got a great hero in Vala for your 4-man. But you've let through now ETC Malfurion. Whether they opt to go with one or two or neither of them here, you've let through some of the basically top tier of what we've seen. You know, it's been a while since we saw a gold club, but it was something that a few months ago, Brightwing, especially around BlizzCon, was, well, never mind that, as we see Morales with Gul'dan there. Technically, you have a Team Global there with a medevac. If you really want to play the global game.
Global. Yeah, medevac's probably actually the go-to anyway, just because you have Gul'dan, you don't really need a stem drone. It can be good with Falstad, but still having that Morales and being able to move in for an aggressive play, especially after a one-team fight, is a great tool.
Well, second ban here. Again, no warriors have, outside of Dahaka, it's kind of hard sometimes when you look at Dahaka as a warrior because he does everything else away from the team so well.
True.
But ETC, you got to wonder who's going to fall into that range. And when you have a Ragnaros, you know, we don't see Varian. Obviously, he's had a slight change. You don't have the stun at level 4 on Warbringer anymore. So you kind of got to look for opportunities on when can you get that set up for Ragnaros. A power slide directly into a root is a good priority target. The thing about Morales is you have Safeguard, which mitigates a lot of that damage.
And now the question is, what do we have banned here? I'm thinking Zarya or Muradin for the ban, just to choke out the other tanks. Zarya because of that Vala mix-up, so Zarya is going to be banned out. Now, Muradin continues to get more popular here with the Eastern Hemisphere, if you will. They really just seem to love that hero, and I feel like that's the pickup you move into for the team if you are on TFC. Now, with Muradin, what else do you grab? Wouldn't mind seeing... what? They could actually just go for Johanna instead to help with that wave clear, because they are having a bit of a crisis with their wave clear in terms of actually dealing with that middle and bottom 4-man rotation that Gul'dan and Morales will provide. It's going to be Diablo and Ariel instead.
The Ariel pickup was something I felt like it was coming, especially after their first series, so not a surprise there. The Diablo pick, maybe a little bit more surprising, again, if you get the isolation, but Zeratul and Muradin instantly locked in for super perfect team. And now Zeratul, he's the ultimate. So in the Korean region, we see a lot of this, and we've been seeing it start to move over to Europe and things like that, is that you take the Zeratul, and because you never know where he's at, you can't really posture up in the top lane for fear of getting ganked. And you have Falstad up there who can hit that slow, makes it really easy for Zeratul to stay on top of that. Once you get to 7 especially, Zeratul, basically from level 1 though, is a huge threat. So I love the pickup there.
He also can be just a solid top laner himself. Normally you would throw Falstad up there, but I actually wouldn't mind seeing Falstad do a lot of rotation, because Zeratul can be annoying in that top lane. Not because he's trying to actually win it, but because of that blink ability. He's able to wave clear. He's also to contest the shrine. So Zeratul can be a solid pickup here. There isn't really a major setup though, except for the Void Prison into Haunt or Horrify. So we'll have to see how that will pay off. It's more of an isolation game, I feel like, with that Zeratul pickup. Now, over to TFC. What do we need here? We have our Ragnaros, we have our Vala, we got Diablo engaged. Do we get a Jaina here for wave clear? No, they're going to grab Tyrael.
That is a huge VP counter right there. We actually saw it a little bit in an earlier series to where if Tyrael does manage to stay outside of that or coming directly out of it, you just simply put down that sanctification and mitigate a lot of that damage and potentially anything that could be coming. As you said, the Horrify there, if you can isolate somebody with the VP, you isolate that front line. Diablo, again, the hardest thing with Diablo is that he doesn't have the same mobility as somebody like an ETZ, somebody like a Muradin. Yes, he can shadow charge if there's a minion nearby, but outside of that, it could be trouble if they can isolate that. But Tyrael, I like the pickup there, but they are pretty heavy on the front line now.
They're heavy on the front line, and I feel like they're lacking wave clear. They have Ragnaros in the top lane, which they're solid with, but the Gul'dan, Zeratul, and Falstad pressure can be very scary, especially if you get your mid lane pushed in and your bottom lane pushed in. Falstad can fly in. You can have Zeratul peel off and go for the gank rotations. So overall, I immediately lean towards SPT a little bit more with their draft. However, TFC does have a strong foundation for team fights if they get the Diablo engage they want. I don't know. What are you thinking?
You got to look at Void Prison. It's the ultimate X Factor. It always comes out at these. It's been played more and more. You know, again, if it comes to isolation, I really think that you're going to see Zeratul used a lot towards the rotation that we already talked about. I think if you get the picks early, you don't necessarily have to worry about forcing the fight as much. We see that a lot when teams are able to get that early lead. So I think when it comes to that, Gul'dan, you know, we're going to see the wave clear. If you can get the isolation with the VP, you horrify someone in front. That's what I'm looking for, I think, when you look at true initiation. But outside of that, you've got the global, you've got the wave clear, and if you can get the picks with Zeratul, then you've basically got a formula for Dragonshire.
Yeah, really looking at Vola here to be one of the main aggressors. One, because you're going to have your Oriole crown on top of you, so you're going to need to be getting that energy built up so you can actually get heals for your team. And secondly, just because of the wave clear coming in the opposing way, you need to pressure your opponent and try to drain out that Morales, who's going to be really needing that mana available. If you kind of just leave the opposing team alone, they're just going to run all over you all day. You're going to have so much control with that Muradin, with that Zeratul rotation, as Jay Howe was mentioning. So it's going to be a hard game, I feel like, for TFC. But if their Vola is aggressive and goes full MVP, they got a chance.
When I see the Tyrael pickup at the end, it kind of makes me wonder, because did the Zeratul scare them away from something else to where they feel like they had to go into something they might not be comfortable with? And you talked about, I think it's one of the most underrated things is when you go up against a Morales, like you can basically play the, let's just make sure we have splash damage, AoE damage, force Morales to use all of her mana. Once you tap, then you have a clock because it's a 2-minute timer basically, and then at some point she's got it back, and then you can take control of that lane and stuff like that. So it's kind of a delicate balance of make sure you have proper wave clear, make sure you have a little bit of AoE damage on the side, and then you can start to control that lane. But against the Gul'dan and Morales alone, it's actually very difficult to do because Gul'dan has that self-heal himself. So if all else fails, he's like, don't worry, don't spend any mana, let me just hit W real quick.
Yeah, I think you actually are nailing it on the head there. TFC just kind of pushed into the Tyrael pickup because of that Void Prison threat. In their 5th slot, they had a couple of options. If they wanted to, they could do solo warrior with Diablo. A little bit difficult, but doable, and go into a Jaina. And suddenly you have your Ring of Frost combo that's available, especially with Gul'dan. If he ever does a life drain, you're set up for that. You also can handle pressure in terms of wave clears because of the Blizzard being available. You also have the great aggression of Zeratul or Muradin to jump on you with the Cold and Cold. Or you have the other route of, do we need to be more tanky? We can actually do Johanna here. Vola behind a Johanna with an Ariel backing him up can be a solid mix-up. So I think I agree with you. The Zeratul pickup just really put TFC in a spot where they just had to adjust and grab that Void Prison.
It'll be, you either know how to play against it or you don't know how to play against it. Yes. I can tell you one thing, that Vorpal Blade at level 1, you will instantly find out. The good thing is you have Ragnaros in that solo lane, so if you're trying to gank Ragnaros, it's not as easy, but again, you got Falstad, you get a slow, things could get real scary real early, and one minion wave up at the top, it's not necessarily about like how fast can we get a DK. Mm-hmm. It's about how steadily can you wear down your opponent, whether it's through a pick, whether it's through one bad rotation, things like that. And again, like you see what Super Perfect Team is trying to do. Execution should be on their side, but Team Face Check, you got to wonder, is their 4-man going to be good enough? And with Ariel there, you just have to feed it and push in as best you can.
It'll be okay. It just comes down to how Ragnaros handles his top lane, which it's hard to handle that top lane because it's probably going to be against Falstad. I can see a world where it's Zeratul. So you naturally have the inclination of, okay, let's push this top lane, put pressure there. But the next thing you know, you have a Muradin that's peeled off from the 4-man rotation, jumped over a wall, hit a Stormbolt on you, and suddenly you could be dead, especially with the aid of a Zeratul. So Ragnaros will have to hold that top lane well, and the communication for TFC has to be on point. The moment anyone disappears, you got to let your Ragnaros know, okay, man, you gotta chill out. Let's find out, though, as we are going into game number 1. This will be Dragonshire for the Battleground. This is a best-of-3 series. Team Face Check will be taking on the Super Perfect Team.
If I could have a profile picture, like in-game, and like when we go to load into a game and I could look as cool as that, like I would love that, man. Just like hover around. Like just appear.
With your little Grandmaster icon right above it and everything, just looking beautiful. I can see that.
Let's not get crazy with Grandmaster, but
you got this, man. New season, easily you got it.
I got to be home. I can't keep going to all these events. I can't play. But you can see the team's already, again, Super Perfect Team. You got to wonder, like, expectations are on them to win. Like, you can't just come in here and go out day 1. You are representing China. You're obviously, trying to take that step just to get to day 2. And if you go out, I mean, so much, like, you see Taiwan, you're like, all right, you kind of expect them to be a region that's not as strong, but somehow every time these events come up, something happens, and you're like, okay, like, I'm a little bit surprised, but will this be the surprise of the day?
That is the question. I don't think we find out until after game number 1, honestly, just because of the first couple of matches that we saw from both these teams. They didn't look too stellar, but then again, their matchups were incredibly difficult. Let's find out, though. Game 1, finally starting here on our series. Let's go ahead and move into Dragonshire. How here we are on Dragonshire. Can you do us a favor and introduce the team to the left?
Yeah, that's going to be Team FaceJack, otherwise known as TFC, as Ostinger is going to be on Ragnaros, Kim on Ariel, KT4 on Diablo, Garnet Devil, and we kind of got away from that, but I just want to say that Pa is on Vala.
Best name in the tournament. Sun Xiao will be on Gul'dan. We will have Kite here playing the Muradin. TY will also be playing the Falstad. And let's go and have our teams run towards our lane. Zeratul does look like he will be holding that top lane. That's a bit of a fun matchup. Ragnaros has to kind of push it in to get the pressure there, and Zeratul can deal with it. But most of the threat actually comes from Zeratul blinking over the wall, grabbing the shrine. Our teams have actually spread out relatively well. No major aggression here in the early game.
Yeah, and I think right there what you see is Muradin and Zeratul. You try and catch the rotation there. The minute one person goes to rotate up, you just kind of catch them in that rotation, and Falstad can fly up if needed. So it is one of those things that comes through. Not going to happen this game, though.
Yeah, you gotta be slow and careful there. You don't want to really go for the crazy aggression, and Ragnaros actually plays that very well. He loops around the left side. He knows something is missing.
He did the same thing in Infernal Shrines. E-Star's just like walking ETC around. It's like, I'm just going to take the longest route possible because I don't want to die within the first minute.
Sometimes it's worth it to lose that one minion if you don't know where the 3 members are. Even if they're not even near you, if you go and look at the replay afterwards, and you go, oh, they were actually the bottom right lane, it's still worth the safety at that point. TFC will continue their rotations down here from the middle and the bottom. I'm watching the San Jiao here. We're going to see how he can handle the pressure coming his way. He's actually decided not to even leave his lane, which is pretty typical with the Gul'dan Morales. Even with that scouting drone, it is difficult to actually head to that mid lane.
Well, there's the rotation we talked about as we saw Masaka up on top with Zeratul. Falstad rotating he's the one rotating to the middle. Again, if anything goes awry up top, you have a quick flight away. And missed Stormbolt opportunity there, but you're not going to get a kill on Diablo, not this early, but it does eat quite a bit of damage there. As Muradin and Falstad, where are they going to go to next?
We're going to watch our Muradin. He'll be the one that has to do the rotations. He'll lead the charge there. Very great on this battleground for the movement. Big detainment strike on the bottom right. Gul'dan will be knocked back. He turns around for the corruption. Kite missing out on the Stormbolt, but Diablo's come down to join the party. Obviously, the 2 juicy targets he wants here is Morales and the Gul'dan, but they are playing very safe in the back right. Falstad makes an aggressive play to the top lane as he has to soak. As Zeratul and Falstad continue to dance back and forth and kind of trade laning duties.
Yeah, and that'll be what we keep our eye on. You know, the middle lane is going to be something that it becomes heavily contested as Masaka getting
bodied.
I mean, that's just, you got to be careful of your position. You got to make sure you don't angle yourself so he can grab you and throw you into the wall. You kind of move to the side there as he continues to put the damage on. But right now, they're completely controlling. Ragnaros is dominating the top lane, and the bottom completely controlled. And right now, they're going to have to send in reinforcements to defend the middle now.
Finally, the 3 do get here, but Ragnaros is able to push the top lane. Couple minions of experience will be missed, but Zeratul finally will get there to soak it. But yes, the control for TFC has been stellar. A big detainment strike on Falstad, and TFC moves in for the dragon. However, Gul'dan will rotate to the bottom and grab the shrine, but TFC showing some life.
Yeah, you know, it's all because of that control in the bottom lane. I mean, they were able to do that. Ragnaros, again, is going to hold his own more than probably any other hero against Falstad outside of somebody like Dahaka, and so he's just staying up there. Right now, there's not really been any threat. The Zeratul threat that we talked about, he's kind of been the solo up there while Falstad's been moving around, and they finally rotated down, but it was a little bit too late. They lost control, and then he could not leave that middle lane.
Here's that pressure that you would typically expect from a Muradin, but with it being an Ostinger near his turret, Ragnaros is just a little bit too powerful in that exchange, especially with Zeratul not really dishing out the damage until level 7. We're going to see Ragnaros walk away from that fight. However, he overextends his bounce slightly here, trying to bait out his opponent. Tyrael will show up, but he bit off a bit more than he could chew.
There it is. That's pretty much what we expected to happen. It finally did happen. You know, Trickster, one of the things I'm actually curious about, I mean, pre-4 for Vala, where she gets that big burst damage on her multi-shot. I kind of wondered why we didn't see more aggression with that bottom lane. Gul'dan, they just kind of left up there. They're trying to do their strategies elsewhere instead of dominating that lane. And speaking of dominating, Tyrael having to get out of there. The Stormbolt hits, but that's the 2-man. They're primarily focused on this top lane, getting the pick, getting control, and trying to get out at that advantage, but they're giving up a lot in the bottom lane of the process.
Yeah, you see the results actually. They grab the Giants on the far left. Typically you don't grab that. That's why you normally have a lot of members in the bottom. Hang on here. We're having Tyrael focus down. 3 members from SPT will get a takedown. But normally why you have so many members stocked in the bottom lane is because of that giant pressure. If you ever sneak anyone off to grab it, suddenly that lane has an advantage. And so that's why we normally have top laners one-on-one on the top with the occasional rotations. But with SPT putting so much focus on the top lane, you saw TFC get a slight advantage in terms of damage on the turrets. But suddenly this Ragnaros is actually having a very hard time grabbing the shrine. So TFC has to keep up their pressure on the bottom. The problem is if Muradin and Zeratul ever disappear, Vala suddenly has to think twice about where she's at.
And what we see in that top lane is they're gathering the pressure, they're continuing to put it on, they're getting the kills, but because they're not doing anything with it, although yeah, there it is. I was going to say, it was going to happen, but now Diablo charging in. SPT, Masaka trying to walk away there, and now Gul'dan seems to be getting body blocked, but Ariel's got to be careful as well, Trixler.
Yep, can take some damage. We're going to have Garnet Devil on the right, low on health. Kite going in, decides to pull away with the shield popping up. But with SPT constantly rotating out Zeratul top, False at top, and Muradin top, the confusion becomes a little bit harder on comms of where everyone is, and that allowed Zeratul to finally get that slight gank onto Papa and take him out, as Ariel with the burst kills can come out once, but then again with the cooldown taking a bit longer than normal, Vala just fell victim to the aggression from Zeratul. So solid rotations from SPT and nice confusion that they're kind of injecting into this match.
Ooh, is Garnet Devil going to go in? They got to be careful because 10 is on the horizon, and if we get a rotation, a sneaky rotation, this could turn ugly really quick. But luckily, Ragnaros was able to take care of Falstad there. So nice defense. They should be able to pick up level 10 in the meantime, stay on even footing. But this is where we kind of fall sometimes, Trixler, is Dragonshire, you can't always expect that like crazy early game. You can't expect the early DKs. A lot of times you kind of get in these even matches to where it's like you can't quite get that advantage. But after 10, it's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, that's where you make the big play to attempt to take out 1 or 2 members and go for said dragon. Usually having the globals has the advantage in that scenario. We do have Medevac and Falstad's Mighty Gust being available for SPT. The pickoff is relatively hard for them though, as TFC is playing very safe. As of late, when 10 hit, Diablo has started to group up his teammates. Ostinger, though, in the top left, is playing safe. He's actually on his side of the battleground, but SPT gets aggressive. Can Garnet Devil punish, though? Papa Paw is on the right side, looking for Falstad. Can he get the multi-shot and the Hungering Arrow? No. Ty will be able to escape. SPT gets a takedown on the side of TFC's map and will survive.
I think SPT might have been a little bit lucky there. Ariel came in just whipping those ribbons, almost took down Zeratul on the backside, but lucky to be alive there. Good timing on them to get that pick. Starting to stretch their lead a little bit by getting those picks. It's 4 kills to 1, nothing major, but the Siege Giant in the bottom continue to push. And right now, no structures, I don't think, have fallen in any form or fashion.
Ooh. Kite going in for engagement, Mrs. Stormbolt. Zeratul doesn't mind, jumps in, but yes, no forts has fallen, and I think you're right about the turrets. We have some damage here and there, but overall, our teams are very even in weapon structure. Kite does jump away, Horrify pops out, Papa Paw is being focused. There is the Aegis, Void Prison for the last second hit, maybe. Diablo on the right side for zoning. Sanctification being used too. Everything is being burned, and if Zeratul gets his kill, I'm gonna freak out. No, he does get away, but TFC was so frightened for Zeratul. They used, what, 3 heroics there just to survive? And that's gonna be a nice trade for SPT. Falstad grabs the top shrine, the bottom shrine unfortunately under contention, but SPT in a solid spot.
I really want to see, obviously, Muradin is one of the toughest warriors to kill in the game. He's got so much survivability with Avatar and everything. 13, though, for Diablo, his charge talent, his deadly charge. I'm sitting here trying to figure that out, but in the meantime, Diablo is getting caught out, and he is going. Oh, wait a minute.
Ooh.
Just come in and body block, says Garnett. He's like, you shall not pass.
Tyrael with the multiple saves so far in this matchup. 13 about to hit for SPT. The Dragon is unlocked, but it's just such a scuffle back and forth between our teams. No major advantage has been grabbed. We've had some kills, obviously, 4 to SPT, but nothing has really resulted into a Dragon. Big APOC, though, does go off. Sulfurous Smash will not connect, but the Sulfurous actual Q comes in and brings out the final takedown.
It looked a little weird, but the final result was the same. Crystal Aegis has been used on Arios. Diablo coming in, and now it looks like we are going to have another kill. Zeratul the next to fall. Medivac used for an escape, but that looked like Oriole was going to go down.
Kite's not done, though. Kite's jumping in. There we go. He finally hits a Stormbolt. Can he get a takedown? No. Gul'dan on the right side doesn't really bring that upfront burst damage that you'd want. He can slowly sustain himself through his opponents, but nothing there in terms of kills. Diablo on the back right. Kite just does not care. Keeps jumping in, of course, with it being a Murd, and it is very difficult to take out.
There we go. There's the charge. Another charge in. The flip over. Avatar has been used.
Same time, we have Gul'dan working damage on the side. Ostinger goes in for the Morales. He's going to kite away, and here is a Falstad. Ragnaros fallen victim as he's going to be taken out. Diablo taking some damage at the same time. Zeratul does have Void Prison. He's currently shucking around the top. Could start floating down and set up his teammate for a fight. Horrifies in 18 seconds. Here comes Zeratul.
He's coming in, and you can see the poison damage and Sanctification used a little bit early. That's going to wear off by the time VP is here. And Crystal Aegis has been used, but the heals from Ariel somehow keeping it alive. Pop! Finally goes down, but Falstad fell in the process. I have no idea how they lived that long.
Whew, so much back and forth, the Sanctification being used, but again, it was burned out. We had the Ariel Aegis come out. She did get a massive heal on 4 members, which was helpful. Eventually, Vala did fall, but there was enough time for Falstad to also be taken out by TFC. But the major reward for SPT. Here is a Dragon. Super perfect team will push in this middle lane. At the same time, they're actually grabbing Giants for the bottom to have double-pronged pressure.
Yeah, they're getting double-pronged pressure, but Masaka already ate a lot of damage. DK down to 35%, and they still have 50 seconds left on this. They could posture up here and get a bit of a push in, but you got to wonder if they might have pushed in a little bit too hard there as the Siege Giants finally coming in the back and already going down. That DK is not going to live for much longer.
Yeah, it's poking here. We're going to have Gul'dan on the side working in some Qs at the same time. Diablo goes in for the engage, won't before being used, but Falstad is content in the top lane, soaking experience. SPT will take their turrets, their experience, and move towards that level 16 without any problems, really adjusting for them as they rotate out appropriately. Kite will also make sure that TFC does not lock down any members as Falstad continues to grab the top.
Yeah, and that's the power of the global. You can continue to stretch your lead at 1 kill, 1 DK, and look at that.
16.
All the damage was done elsewhere. They've got themselves an 11.5 lead.
SPT can afford to be aggressive here, especially if they want to go for a fly-in. They have a full level advantage. They have Void Prison, they have Mighty Gust, they have Escape if it doesn't go well. I want to see them get aggressive. Here goes Falstad flying in. Big Horrify connects. Vala instantly deleted from the game. Kim on the back left. Mighty Gust into the trees. Masaka looking for some takedowns. We're going to have an Aegis popped here as well as an Apocalypse, but Kim finally does fall. And there's the Void Prison. SPT is looking for blood.
I think they're going to get it the minute that it comes down. You'll Sulfurous Smash in return, though. And KT is going to go down, and Garnet Devil, he's going to fall down too. That is 4 members dead, and the Dwarf tossed out. He gets caught, but Tyrael straight not enough to take that down. A 4 for nothing for SPT.
Masaka's not joking around, man. He picks Zeratul. He's hitting all the buttons here and doing well in his fight. I can see why Wolf is so hyped about him here, as I'm starting to see that hype myself, and I'm getting pretty pumped for his Zeratul play. It's been pretty darn great. Nice poke, nice engage, never taking damage that he doesn't need to take, setting up his team for the fights. He just checks all the boxes for me as a Zeratul player. Now, we're going to have the Shrines relatively soon, but for now, the aggression does not stop as SPT moves in on Diablo. They focus him down, and yep, the Lord of Terror does not exist anymore.
The Lord of Terror doesn't have soul, so he's not coming back, and here's a replay that we have. As you can see, Kim at the top left being completely isolated, and there's the VP. You know, they held on for quite a while here.
I like the spread out because the Sulfurous Smash was coming afterwards, and granted we had Falstad get focused down, but we had the heal from Morales on the right side. We had 4 members, 1 top right, 1 bottom left, 1 bottom right, and 1 bottom center, and they were able to spread out so well that Ragnaros couldn't get a takedown.
You know, I love the fact that you pointed out about Kite being so aggressive earlier because he went heavy impact at 16. And he is just like, guys, I've been jumping in all game. I'm going to continue to jump in. This time I'm getting stuns. So please follow me in as we see Ossinger.
Oh my gosh, Papa. Woo. Kite can't stop, won't stop, man. He keeps up the aggression, full on health here. All these members for TFC should die with the aggression from SPT. Corruption on the right side, Kim on the bottom left, continue to be poked. The grenade to knock Falstad back into Ariel. SPT has not stopped here. Look at the kills, J-How. 16-4.
Things are getting ugly real quick. You know, it was kind of ominous. I was like, hey, you know, post 10, things are about to change a lot. I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
Like, this is completely different than what I thought. Masaka going to be in that DK again. Can they get a little bit more value this go around?
Yeah, this is where we get a little bit critical of SPT. They have so many kills, they have a massive lead, but look at the map. They have forts up everywhere, no keeps taken out yet, and it needs to happen now here with the Dragon. Obviously, they don't have a team that really excels at pushing down by themselves, but they definitely have to use a map objective to be effective, and they're doing it here. Masaka's in the middle, but that was brought up because SPT played so aggressive in the bottom left that TFC had to defend. 20-16. For SPT, they have a massive lead.
I'm a little bit surprised. I mean, they used that fort in the middle to obtain 20. They already opened up the bottom, and Keep is far more valuable, but Crystal Aegis has been used. There's the Dwarf Toss. Garnet Devil, he does have that Eldruins if it needs to go away, and he does.
I'm a little confused with you, actually, because they pushed down the fort, got 20, which is to force a Molten Core in the middle lane, but the moment that Molten Core does pop, you rotate on the bottom left. Diablo gets picked off, but that rotation was slow, in my opinion. Regardless, they are ahead, and they should push in for this keep. No tank here for TFC, and granted, Teriel is a tank, but no Diablo, no Meat Pie to move in and grab those aggressive plays. Masaka does have Void Prison available, and TFC has to respect it.
Well, with 20 tier advantage in a 5v4, Gul'dan's just gonna poke and poke and poke, and down goes our first keep. So things starting to open up for SPTs, things starting to look really bad here for Team FaceCheck. They're gonna have to try and make something happen, but the Dwarf Toss in, the mighty Gus Trixler.
Big Horrify too, and that's gonna be a haunt. Ragnaros focused down, didn't even have a chance there to even attempt to stay alive. Avoid Prison to set up the last kill here on Kim. Kim on the back left. Sanctification has been used, but it's too little too late. Kite jumping in with the heavy impact. Here is the Aegis. Apocalypse has been used, but Tyrael falls. Can they at least trade out a kill? No! Kite will survive with the jump away. Man, he is just kiting away on his opponents. Only 2 members left. SPT going for more aggression here. Try and get this keep down to low HP. 2 keeps is definitely doable for them.
He has 9 lives, I think. He's just jumping away from everything whenever it matters. 2 keeps are down. Yeah, I almost wonder, could they have ended there with their 20 tier advantage, but 2 keeps down, Falstad flying up, getting the clear. Things 20 kills to 4.
They could have possibly ended. They actually have auto attack Falstad, and normally you would say, well, with a hammering Falstad and a Gul'dan, sure you can't poke it, but being at that late game Falstad, you could definitely burn it down. However, they do take the safer route. And why not? You're still 3 levels above your opponent. A Shrine is activating. You grab a Dragon here, and then you force the issue.
Well, they use this to grab a siege camp again. So when we talked about it earlier, it's one of the longer game strategies when you actually brought this up about controlling the bottom lane. Now, this is an exaggerated point, but you have it pushed up so far that it makes a very easy defense, and you have good visibility on the bottom lane, so you don't have to do much, as we see Falstad flying down to grab this. And it does get interrupted at the last minute, but you now have complete control over the battleground. There's absolutely nothing that TFC can do, and this should be a game-ending DK.
Molten Core should be available soon. TFC needs to buy some time, so they have the Molten Core for the fight. Ragnaros is set up in the back right for a flank. We'll probably need him to Hearthstone back soon here. Oh no, another member picked already down in the bottom left corner. Diablo is going to be focused down. Sanctification will be here for the save. They do flip the Gul'dan. Gul'dan has a safeguard though, attempting to bring out the damage.
Trixler, the DK is just hitting the core. Like, I know there's a fight going on, guys,
but the DK, on Rag.
Yeah, just so you know, the DK is on the cores. The health is going down. The stun from Ragnaros is going to delay this momentarily, but this is going to be super perfect team taking game number 1, 21-4 in a bloodbath.
Yeah, quite the bloodbath. It looked pretty even in the early game, but suddenly you look at the end game, 21 kills to 4 of the opponents. And after a couple of dragons, a couple of keeps, we have SPT taking a very easy win in the late game. Team Phase Check is going to have to figure out how to hold on to themselves here in the early to mid game, because that game really fell apart quickly.
Quickly is an understatement. Like, I'm sitting there thinking, like, all right, like Dragon Shower guys, sometimes you're gonna get a little bit slower in the game. It's the nature of the beast there, but then eventually it's gonna open up. And I'm sitting there talking about it. And I'm like, all right, it'll open up soon. And then it was just like, it full-blown, like, floodgates opened, like, everybody died, and it was just like, kill, kill, kill. Was there ever, like, a 30-second time span after, like, that level 10 mark that there wasn't a kill? Like, it was just like...
Yeah, it was when all 5 members actually died in the bottom left. Yeah, Team Face Check, unfortunately, just kind of fell over backwards a little bit. The Murden Chaos really started to become a major pain for them, especially when the added layer of Zeratul popping in. It would seem like they actually started winning a team fight against Murden. They did repel him away, and okay, let's go on for an engage and try and get a pick, and here's Zeratul with the Void Prison and immediate aggression on Vala, and sadly Ariel just didn't have enough to save her.
Yeah, Ariel, it's such a tricky hero. I think that the heals are great, the sustain is great, but it's one of those heroes that if you don't get that max value, if your team doesn't have a dominant performance, then Ariel starts to look a little weird. We saw a lot of Crystal Aegises that were used in, I don't want to say panic mode, but somebody's just getting isolated, somebody's getting targeted, and it's great. And then you have Sanctification to back it up, which we saw a few times actually did work out really well for them. But it's all like defensively. It's never like you're being the aggressor to where you can go in, you can save yourself with Sanctification. Everything was completely reactive. They had nothing that they could do, no momentum on their side to be able to push that in. And when you're using all of your heroics defensively and not offensively, you even pointed out, they used 3 heroics to save 1 person one time.
Yeah, and at that point, I think you have to be willing to lose out on a trade and just retreat as a unit of 4 and be okay with losing your Vala. Now, obviously, Vala was the main damage in that composition, so you can understand the panic of, oh snap, our Vala is dying, everyone save him, right? There comes a point when you have to understand, okay, our Vala was out of position, we need to retreat, reset up, and hopefully we can have some more reserved play here from Team Face Check, because if not, you can see that if any chaos is introduced to their gameplay, they just fall apart and snowball so quickly. So recomposure is definitely something they should focus on going into the next match. Now, here is the match summary. You can see those kills, man, 21-4, towers destroyed, 4-0, and of course the core being finished off towards the end there, 21-18. Typically on Dragonshire, you can almost guarantee that you're going to get to late game, get to 20s, but the performance was so dominant that SPT walked away with such a large advantage, 21-18.
That's one of those games you kind of dream about. Like, listen, guys, I know it wasn't exciting, but let's make it exciting, and then you just feel good about it. And you can actually see on the faces of TFC, they just kind of had that look on their face of like, man, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like, that's what it was. And hopefully, they regroup. As you said, the Taiwanese region, we talked about it earlier, has this interesting meta. Maybe they can shift things. And Gilly brought it up. Warhead Junction is an option for this team. If you ever want to just throw a team off, because Warhead Junction is not popular at all. I don't mind the battleground, but a lot of people, it's such a large battleground that's so complex, the diversity of it. A lot of people just like to have their core strategies, and that one just kind of makes things a little crazier. Maybe you take them to Warhead.
Yeah, maybe you do. I mean, at this point, you got to pull the rabbit out of the hat, right? Like, you're on your last map of potentially the tournament here. It's a best-of-3 series. You have to get a win. Obviously, you have all your fans back home in Taiwan cheering you on. So yeah, go with something that you are ready to pull out and that you have practiced for, especially against a team here that is obviously showing off their aggression. If you go to Warhead Junction, I think naturally aggressive plays start to dwindle slightly because there is a harsher laner phase on Warhead Junction than any other battleground in Heroes of the Storm. That's why so many people look at it and go, wow, this is weird. I actually have to sit in lane and actually deal with these warheads that are coming our way. So yeah, if we need something different and Taiwan wants to show off what they do so well, let's do it. Let's go to Warhead Junction.
Taiwan special.
The Taiwan special.
Although we've seen a couple Zagara plays tonight, it seemed a little unexpected. China busting it out. Actually hadn't minded it too much, so is that something Taiwan wants to pull out? I wouldn't mind that at all right now.
Well, let's find out where we are going. Now, remember, the bans were Infernal Shrines and Sky Temple. We just played on Dragonshire. Cursed Hollow will be the battleground that we are moving into. Now, you did allude to Zagara slightly. I don't know if we're going to see it from Taiwan. And of course, there is SPT with the Zagara gameplay. But I feel like this is a battleground that if you do want to play that split push meta, this is the one where Abathur does stand out. We have yet to see him this tournament, but it is one that we see more often in the Western sides.
You said Abathur, and we have this beautiful studio here, and I look over, and directly over your left shoulder, you can't see it because it's behind you. There's Abathur right there on the wall, and I'm like, all right, there's some Abathur. Maybe that's a sign. It's here. We're late into the evening, and Trixler says Abathur, and there's an Abathur peeking at me right over his shoulder.
I mean, it's getting late for us. It's 5 in the morning. I'm ready for crazy.
I'm pretty sure it's like 6 or 6.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. All right, so Cursed Hollow is the battleground. Let's move into it. Now, our first ban of the game will be going over to TFC. What do they elect to get rid of? Commonly, you get rid of some sort of global you don't want to deal with. Falstead's usually the go-to. Dahaka can be okay on this battleground, but Falstead's a little bit more priority just because of the soaking potential, the late game potential, and also the Mighty Gust because of boss control. So let's find out what the ban will be here for TFC.
Maybe it's going to be the reverse. They're going to try and pull that against SPT. Now, I actually wouldn't be surprised. I was going to say I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up banning Dahaka, but they banned Zarya. Let's see if TFC says, look, you played the global game against us. We're going to do the exact same thing. Because I got a feeling, like, Dahaka's a tricky first pick. All right, Tassadar, it fits, the kind of the model. But now, you normally don't want to first pick Dahaka unless you have certain strategies, but Vala Malfurion, man, this is moving quickly.
This is the automatic reaction. Usually when you get a Tassadar, you take away the Vala, then you get the Malfurion because it's obviously the best support after that, just being able to have the control in the fights. The innervates, of course, heals. Everything is just great with Malfurion, and then you have the wonderful God Heroic Twilight Dream. Now, looking at our second and third slot, TFC shouldn't worry too much about that Vala. They are infamous for playing different auto attackers. Zul'jin could be a possible pickup here. I actually wouldn't mind them picking it up the second and third slot because we've seen Zul'jin bans in the past already against Taiwan because everyone's done their research.
Well, they have a plethora of heroes that they could fit into this slot. Again, Tassadar, when we talk about certain battlegrounds that if you don't get that true value out of Tassadar with one of those auto attack heroes or somebody that can really pump up his value, then this isn't necessarily one of his better battlegrounds. Yes, he can stall out, and there's the Lucio to pair with the Tassadar.
Okay, ATC, Lucio, so we're obviously going to be empowering an auto attacker. There's that Zul'jin ban. I really wish we'd have gotten that earlier. I don't mind ETC actually going through if you want to run the double support, which, everyone has their qualms of double support, but with the Tassadar and Lucio, okay, it makes sense. So I would grab Zul'jin there, and if ETC gets banned out, you just pick up Murden or Hard Engager later on, because you're obviously here because you want to get your auto attacker to run. So sadly, Zul'jin gets banned out. We won't be seeing that. There is always the option of Rainer, but gosh, man, Jimmy is one of those hard heroes to pull out. So there is Dahaka with the ban, and now our third and fourth pickup is available for SPT.
They are just flat out flying through this draft, Trixler, and there's the Zagara. Now, here's the thing about Zagara. Zagara against Tassadar. Tassadar has something called Oracle that reveals creep tumors, plus his Psystorm is not that, mana intensive, and you can clear that. So depending on how lanes match up, Zagara might not get that early game value or that early game vision, and then later in the game. Cursed Hollow is one of those maps that you can get through the forts, and it looks really good doing it as Zagara. But when you get late game and you're pushing, if you opt to run Nidus, obviously, if you opt to run Nidus and you get about 3/4 of the way through the battleground, if you can get that far, if your creep gets cleared up, if your Nidus gets cleared up, Zagara's value diminishes drastically at that point. And it's something that we've seen a lot of teams in the past, particularly last summer. There were a lot of teams, especially in NA, that fell short when it came to the late game when they had Zagara cops.
Yeah, Zagara is one of those heroes that you're kind of hoping that you set yourself up well when you move into the mid game. They do have boss control, they have Vala damage. I do think ETC is already solid here for TFC to handle Zagara pressure. You just grab Echo Pedal, get that stage dive, and you can force fights at any point. They're going to move into Illidan and Greymane. So we now have a dive comp available. I, in fact, believe that ETC will be the one to deal with the pressure coming their way, and they'll move into stage dive. Ariel, the last pickup here. Double support Zagara solo Tyrael with Vala carry.
Mouth Ariel. Mouth Ariel is something we saw in the Taiwan finals.
It was wasn't that a first and second pick, right?
It was against TFC. It was not pretty. This is a full dive comp from TFC.
Yep.
And I'm all for going in. This if you, depending on where you fall with your heroics and where it falls, I think if you go against the Knight of Zagara, this is a hunt game. And I think that in a lot of ways, it's a hunt game, is that you can mitigate a lot of that lane control. You can find the picks that you need. If you're an all-in comp, that's fine, but you also have to find ways to get picks. Illidan can do that, but you have to find ways to. So I think this is probably a hunt game, especially if you go against the Knight of Zagara. The Knight of Zagara is actually terrified of hunt Illidan's. Like, it's just like, look at me, I'm pushing a lane. The minute that you get vision from one of your minions, it's like you hear that sound and you're like, I'm in trouble.
It's actually interesting because I see a world where now we can actually sell Devouring Maw over Nidus Network because of the point that you just brought up. Although Devouring Maw on this battleground is very hard for Zagara to pull off. One, she just doesn't do very well if pressure comes her way, and they have Illidan Greymane that could chase her down. Granted, you have the Sanctification and the Aegis to deal with that, but suddenly it becomes this weird tug of war of where ETC is looking at Zagara, waiting for her to pick a heroic, because if we have her go the Nidus Network, you have to go for Sage Dive, I think, to match it, or you can have Illidan with the Hunt to do so. But Zagara also looks at ETC, and if he picks Mosh Pit, then suddenly you go Devouring Maw, and you have a setup automatically to move in for an engagement. So this is a bit of a weird thing. This is kind of a flashback to, what, 2015, 2016 Heroes of Storm?
Malf Ariel, though, with a Zagara who doesn't necessarily put a ton of damage out. I mean, you can.
I mean, that's all Vala. Like,
it is all Vala, but what happens when Vala